we're in. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining us to discuss the university-wide impacts of this coronavirus pandemic. This is the first of what I assume we will have many virtual meetings, and hopefully we're all going to get used to this technology. I had a little struggle with it this morning myself. This particular meeting is for discussion about the impact of the coronavirus on the university and university health. There will be no actions taken. In the spirit of transparency and as practice for our April 23rd regular meeting, which will have actionable business to consider, I'd like to call the roll of the board so we can announce who is participating. So trustees, when your name is called, please turn on your camera and your microphone and alert us of your presence. If you are only participating by telephone, please note that too. Benita Black.
I'm here.
Scott Brinkman.
So I believe Scott's listening in at the very least.
All right, Randy.
I'm here.
Wonderful. Raymond.
Here.
John Chilton.
Here.
Sandra Frazier, who I've seen. I know I saw her, so I know she's here. Diane Medley.
Here.
Great. Of course, I'm here. Jasper. Anybody seen Jasper? I see initials across the bottom of the screen, and I don't see.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sir. There you are. Jim
Okay,
Rogers.
great.
Jim Rogers.
I'm unmuting.
There we go. Okay, I see John Smith. What about Krista?
I'm here.
And Ron Wright.
I do not see Ron Wright in the room.
Okay, well, I think we've got everybody. I'm going to turn it over to Neely. We thought in order to make sure we get through all the material that we'd ask everybody to hold your questions until the end. And that'll also help just in terms of us not talking on top of each other when people are trying to chime in. So are there any questions before we get started? Okay, Neely, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mary. First of all, Jake, can you see and hear me okay?
Yes, I can, and I'm ready for the presentation. Whenever you're ready, just let me know.
I will do that. Good morning, trustees, and thank you so very much for joining us here today. I would like to remind you that again, as Chair Nixon said, in the spirit of openness and transparency, today's meeting is available to the public, to the media, and the entire Cardinal family through the publicly available live stream. I'd like to begin by talking about in times of crisis, such as we are facing now, it is really important to reconnect with first principles, to think about what our values are. So I'd like to remind everybody that every single decision we have made here, we've tried to remember the cardinal principles that animate and really empower everything we do. We try to remember that we are a community of care, and we care deeply about those within the Cardinal family, as well as the community that's broader in Louisville, the Commonwealth, and beyond. We also hold ourselves accountable to our actions to one another. We respect one another, irrespective of our positions, whether within the organization or on a given issue. We also have deep and abiding respect for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We act with integrity. We know we serve a noble purpose, and we help others discover their own. We are agile, and we are leaders. And for those of you who are listening to this for the first time, maybe it's the public or media, yes, this does spell cardinal. So these are our cardinal spirits, the principles that we try to live by. And I would like to say a few words before I turn it over to the team. I wanted you all to get a sense of the various aspects of what a university is all about. And that's really across my span of control. You will hear in a moment about academic life, faculty, staff, students, how we are doing. You'll hear about what is happening on athletics. It's about 10% of our budget, but as you know, it has an outsized effect on how people perceive us. You'll hear from our operations and financially how we're doing. You'll hear also, most importantly at this moment, about our healthcare enterprise and how we are doing in serving the broader community. And we will also reference our many actions to make sure that we are communicating appropriately with whether it's local, state, and federal levels, or whether it's with the public to keep them informed about what is going on. I am so proud of the team. I have to tell you that there could not be a better group of leaders across the board. I am so pleased, and this is an opportunity for you as trustees to see what is happening across the university. There are a few people, though, that I have to single out for special honors today. I'm going to begin with my chief of staff, who also heads up external affairs for us. So that's all media and the government relations, and that's Michael Wade Smith. I think my whole team will say that the effort to make sure that we're staying in communication, staying on track, I really am extraordinarily grateful. I also want to single out our Delphi Center, Gail Rhodes, the whole group, because within 4 days, they trained and helped our entire faculty move online. And that's something we are very proud of. IT services. Again, Rehan, Catherine, the entire ITS team, thank you. I don't know how you've done it, but we are grateful to you. The HR team, you'll hear from Mary Elizabeth Miles. As you can imagine, ever since we started tackling this, I don't think any of them have received any sleep at all, but we are very grateful. Our whole communications team, thank you. And of course, the leaders that are presenting today, when you hear from Beth Bain, she will, as our chief academic officer, she will tell you, and I will acknowledge her and the entire team of deans and vice provosts who've truly worked tirelessly throughout this. And similarly for Vince and Dan Durbin and, of course, Tom Miller and others that you'll hear from. I do want to say a special thank you to all of our essential employees. Certainly everyone who is in clinical care, we understand and appreciate and thank them, but so many people, Mark Watkins and Michael Martis will tell you, whether it's our custodial staff, our physical plant, people in housing and dining, thank you for your extraordinary efforts. And to remind everybody, the special challenge we face, and it's the special opportunity and honor we have, is that for many, many students, we are their home, the safest place that they could be. And we have always made that commitment that we put our students' needs first. And I hope you all see that we are doing that. We've also made a huge commitment that we are a great place to work. And that means taking care of our faculty and our staff. After all, when you say, what is the University of Louisville and why, what do we stand for? It's these people. That's the living brand. They represent us day in and day out. So thank you to everybody. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our team. Just a quick reminder, we sent this to you as PowerPoint ahead of time. This is a dry run, really, for one of many to come, as Mary Nixon pointed out to you. I have asked everybody to do a brief overview, and in the spirit of keeping up our spirits, our morale, we will share challenges with you, but we'd also like to share good news along the way. And that's really to recognize that we are in really tough times, but that we as Cardinals are tougher than anything that comes before us. So with that, thank you so very much. It is such an honor to be president of this incredible university at this time. And with that, I would like to have Jake pull up the presentation and we'll get started. Jake, will you move to the presentation, please? Next slide. Next slide, please.
No, okay, well, I think I think he's right now, isn't he? Can you see the academic slide?
No, I still see there we go.
Okay.
That's name. Thank you for everything, and please give us the overview.
Okay, so this will be quick. I've been asked to, oh, my slide just disappeared. Okay, there. That we are going to let you know what we've done and a little bit about what we're doing to make sure that we have enrollment in the fall. So we initially, after we announced that all classes were going online, we had a number of students who wanted to withdraw from classes because they were uncomfortable in an online environment. We immediately made a decision to not process any of those requests to withdraw, to kind of give students a chance to finish courses and to see what they could do on the online environment. And we were already past the point at which any refunds would be given, so it was not an economic decision in any way. We just wanted to keep students in school so that they would continue with us, and we hope return in summer or fall. Part of our making that switch was that we created a pass-fail policy for spring semester only that overrides unit decisions about what courses can and cannot be taken pass-fail. So for this semester only, if students were enrolled in a course, they're worried about their performance in it because of the online environment, they can switch to a pass-fail grading method. Passes count as passes. They don't have any impact on GPA. Failures are still failures, and they count toward your GPA. So it's not an option. It's not a license for students to not do anything. They still have to pass the course to get a pass. It's not a no-fail policy. It is a pass-fail policy. And so students have been really happy with that decision. I just talked to our registrar this morning, and we have 1,290 students who have taken advantage of this already, just in the 2 weeks since it's been announced. And they have made pass-fail choices for over 2,000 classes. So 1 or 2 classes, it seems to be what students are choosing to take pass-fail. So it's relieving some of the stress. I will also quickly go through some of the other things. We have online access for all students. Our library remains open. The apartments on campus remain open. They have internet access there. I worked with CPE's group. The regionals were already offering students the opportunity to come there, sit in their parking lots if they had to use Wi-Fi, because we have campus-wide access. The community colleges, I worked with the community colleges and got them on board, and that really reaches out into the furthest parts of the state because their community college is closer to most students than there are regional universities. Any student who really does not have access can go sit in their parking lots and take their classes. It's not ideal, but it does provide them with access. Charter Spectrum gave free internet for 60 days to all Jefferson County Public School students and University of Louisville students. Many of the phone companies are providing additional data for students free of charge, and they're providing hotspots so that students can get online. So we have really worked hard to make sure that they can do that. I've only heard 2 students complain, and Michael Martis may have more since I last spoke to him about this, but that they were having difficulty with access. We have moved many of our externships, clinical experiences, and other kinds of internships that students are engaged in this semester to online options when possible. Some of our programs, like nursing, have changed their requirements because their licensure board has changed their requirements. And we are working towards trying to make sure that all of our students have opportunities to finish. We have some good news. That Neely already called out Gale Rhodes and the Delphi Center. They have been absolutely tireless in their efforts to train faculty. They trained over 500 faculty in 4 days. And they are working now to provide training to faculty to design courses for online, which is a different thing than suddenly going remote in the middle of the semester. We want well-designed courses for the summer, and faculty are signing up to do that. because we made the decision that summer term will also be only online. And then I also want to say that the deans have been extraordinary leaders in this, and the faculty and staff across the board have shown compassion. They have encouraged faculty and staff to reach out to students, to offer flexibility, to offer compassion. Our students, in meetings with Neely and with me and Michael Martis, have told us how much they have heard that is positive about students and faculty. I was telling the advisors in a meeting just before this one that I got my first complaint about a faculty member not being responsive at 3 a.m. And I'm thinking, well, if the faculty member wasn't responsive at 3 a.m., they were probably asleep. But want a complaint in all of this. And I've gotten many notes of thanks for encouraging compassion. You'll notice that if you looked at the website, there were a number of letters from Neely and from me to faculty and students and staff urging that this is a time for everybody to come together to treat each other with respect and compassion, and also to give a little grace to people. And we have found that people have stepped up. I also will say that in terms of faculty, I have made 2 policies that impact them. We are evaluating them this semester, and we are adding some questions about the experience students had going online. But we are also allowing faculty to determine whether they include those evaluations in their ongoing personnel files. So like if a faculty member is coming up for tenure, they do not have to include this semester's evaluations in their file. It's sort of the faculty equivalent of a pass-fail policy, I think. We are also, students who are pre-tenure already have in Redbook an option to get an extra year for an extenuating circumstance. And I have made that possibility clear to faculty who are on probation, who are tenure track, and have assured them that anybody who asks for that extra year as a result of this semester may have that extra year. So again, trying to be compassionate in a community of care for our faculty as well as our students. I will talk about recruitment and retention later if you ask me to, or unless you want me to do it now, Neely. I don't know what your plans were. I thought that was a at the end kind of thing.
Sure. Beth, whatever works for the flow.
Okay, so we'll talk about that at the end a little bit, and if I don't bring it up, you can ask me, and I will talk a little bit about what we're doing for recruitment and retention. Thanks.
Beth, before we move on, I'd like everybody to know that Beth Boehm coined this the semester with an asterisk. And I would like to say that that's caught on, so much so I've sent it to several of you, to the board members, certainly, as Vanity Fair ran an article about the whole semester, what's happening across higher ed, and used her words and quoted her extensively. The title was The Semester with an Asterisk. And I do want to say that among academic officers, our deans, our faculty and staff have been in the forefront, and we've been asked to consult with many, many institutions, and we are proud to do that, share our best practices with others across the Commonwealth and the country. So thank you, Beth.
Sure.
Jake, do you want to go to the next slide?
So we know for our students, this is an incredibly challenging time. And as Neely mentioned before, we always focus on our students as a priority. And it's wonderful to serve under her leadership, where she walks that walk, not only in public, but behind the scenes every day. We know for our students, many of them have lost their jobs. Their parents have lost their jobs. They're caring for children that are now at home. They're caring for elderly parents or grandparents. And so we know that they're assisting and helping. Many of our students are looking for opportunities to serve and give back also during this time. And that's not surprising, given the culture here of our students and their commitment to our community. We know our students are also suffering with social isolation and depression and anxiety that goes along with that. So we have tried to be mindful of being able to care for every student and what their needs are. And I'll give you a few updates of some of those action items. As of this Sunday, we had asked all of our students in traditional and suite style housing to move out. Given the social distancing needs and living in a traditional residence hall, we thought that would be appropriate and in keeping with what the directives were from health and governmental officials. We did have 105 students who requested to remain, and we wanted to make sure students had that opportunity to remain because this is their home. Many of them, they don't have another place to go, and so we've made sure and provided those supports for those students, and we'll continue to provide that support. We've maintained dining for those students, and that has been open. We are complying with the carry-out only option, so they can't sit down and eat in our various different food service locations, but they can get a meal. If needed, if a student had to social isolate because they were coming back from a international country or somewhere else, we've also been able to deliver meals to students. We've maintained ongoing communication. I'm thankful to our SGA leadership and Jasper for their commitment to also continue to communicate with students. A big part of that was making sure that we take care of our most needy students. And we opened the Cardinal Cupboard last year for food insecurity as a food pantry. We've maintained a commitment to keep that open. And in March, we've had over 229 students who have utilized that service, and that has stayed open. So we're thankful for the students who've continued to help with that, and some of our student workers and our staff. We've transitioned our campus health and our counseling center to telehealth services, and they've continued to be able to provide those services for students. I'm exceptionally thankful for the donations that have come into our student emergency fund. We've had over 137 student requests, individual requests of students needing emergency funds. And so we are processing through those and are assisting as many students as possible. We're finding something for everyone. So we're not, if a student, we can provide them another resource from funding, we are doing that, or we're providing them direct support from the emergency fund. One of the challenging decisions is there's so many wonderful things and traditions that occur at the university, and it was heart-wrenching in many ways to have to postpone commencement. Our students have worked so hard and deserve this celebration and recognition, and we are committed to providing that to them. Currently, we have set up dates to be able to have commencement ceremonies and multiple commencement ceremonies in December, recognizing this class now, but also the students that would normally graduate in December. But we've also sent out a survey to students in cooperation with getting feedback from some of the students that were being vocal about what the experience is and what they would like to see occur. So we're surveying students to determine are there some other options virtually or online and ways that we can really celebrate all the hard work for students. And I'm also thankful that we've been able to keep students on progress to graduation. Dr. Boehm and all the other deans and everything that they've done, that's been a core commitment and something that we heard loud and clear from students, that they wanted to be able to make sure our most needy students were provided for, and also that students were going to be able to continue their path towards graduation. We had to close our student recreation center, so that's been closed for over 2 weeks now. We've been providing virtual fitness assessments, individualized fitness training options for students. We've gone to online gaming as a way to engage students, and we have thousands of students that are engaging in those online platforms. Our services have moved to remote work. Our career services, disability resources, student support services, tutoring, support for our low-income first-generation students. So they are providing services and webinars and trainings and individual meetings in the remote environment. We've seen a decrease in job postings. So we know with the economy that there are fewer jobs. We've seen about a 25% decrease since this crisis has begun in job postings. But we are committed to providing job opportunities for our students. So there is a very full list of businesses that are hiring. If you go to our Career Center website and also on our community resources document for students, for those that are wanting to work and need to work, we are trying to help them be able to provide those opportunities and also train them and help them to prepare for how to interview in this new virtual world for those that are looking for that first full-time job. I am exceptionally thankful. We've had many staff in student affairs and student services who have been essential and have had to stay on campus. Our housing, our student activities center, counseling staff, many directors have had to be here to be able to support our students. So we thank them for their dedication. Registration has continued on. April 1st was the start of registration. Some adjustments were made to remove some of the normal holds that might have been in place for advising or for spring balances that were due. We were trying to reduce any challenges that students would have to retain at the university and help them during this period of time in crisis. They still are able to contact their advisors, and I know the advisors have been exceptionally busy working to be able to provide support for students during this time and to be able to plan their academic course. Community resources we have, and it's available online, a 12-page document of community resources on financial, food insecurity, if somebody's out in the community, bills, the job opportunities, and we're continuing to update that regularly as we receive more information. We know we have a lot of work ahead of us. Our international plans, our international students, we have over 700 international students that are still residing here in the United States. We had about 37 that went home, and many of them, their countries were asking them to come home. But we are committed to continuing them being able to finish out their semester, even if they are in a remote environment. And we are helping international students who might be staying here longer than they expected, given all the changes with international travel. So we're going to have to continue to plan. Usually we have about 500 students that are departing over the summer for international experiences. We're going to have to work with the faculty, and the faculty and deans have been great about providing other academic options. So we'll continue to work with them. We're transitioning our students in housing. We are making sure that they can have, where possible, now that we've had a lot of students move out, have private rooms and private bathrooms and be able to transition them for environments that are most comfortable for them as they stay here at the university. I'm exceptionally thankful for all the support to be able to move online so rapidly and to be able to continue to provide services for students. We focused on individualized attention. We know every student has their unique challenges and how we serve them is unique. So we are providing that for each student. They can call any office, they can email, we can do virtual chats, they can still receive that support and services. Thankful to the federal government, we've been able to continue to pay our federal work study students. And so even if they still aren't having jobs here on campus, we know those are our most needy. We have a little bit under 40% of our students that are Pell eligible. We are continuing to be able to provide the revenue that they would have received from their jobs working. We've also exceptionally thankful for the safe return of so many of our students that were internationally, were traveling abroad and were in study abroad components. We had over 80 students that were in those situations. We had help from Senator McConnell's office, Senator Paul, Congressman Yarmouth, the State Department. We had some really anxious long evenings and nights helping students to be able to get back, navigating that with parents and third-party providers. And we're thankful that every student was able to return who wanted to return. We did have a few that their parents and the students thought it would be best for them to stay where they were. They were very safe environments, and we respected their wishes of the students and the parents and are helping to be able to continue to support them as they're in those other countries. We know for many of our students, mental health and anxiety is a big concern, and we have been increasing the services that we provide. Our mental health services have transitioned to online and remote and phone access. We have had some staff here for crisis situations as needed. We have put out video with these. You can see the Maintaining Mental Health. Our director, Dr. Aisha Gupta, has put out a video to all students, letting them know how to try and maintain their mental health. But we are still serving students and providing students this support. So you can see on this slide, those two murals, if you recognize them, they are in our renovated student center. You see our home mural, and that is the largest wall. And we really emphasize that for our incoming students and students that are coming here on admissions event. This is our home, and we want students to feel at home and be part of this Cardinal family. And that is what we've tried. We tried to approach this for every student. And on the other side of that, you see the Raise Your L's. And even though we're at a distance, we're continuing to raise our L's and support our Cardinal community. So thank you to everyone who's helped to support our students.
Michael, Martis, thank you very much to you and your whole team for putting students first. I greatly appreciate it. Beth, do you want to make a quick comment about efforts for recruitment?
Sure. We are currently, and this is tricky because we don't know what the final impact will be. The Chronicle and higher ed journals have been arguing that we're going to lose about a fifth of our students, not UofL, but nationally, a fifth of our students due to this. And by lose, I don't mean permanently. I mean that people are planning on taking a gap year this year because the uncertainty over what the virus will be like in the fall. And I'd like to kind of remind you that the students who are most impacted by this are high school seniors right now who are feeling and grieving over the loss of their end of their high school experience. So they've lost prom, they've lost commencement, all those sorts of things. And some of those students are going to want to take the year off so that when they come back to the full freshman experience, because there's still uncertainty about what will happen in August and whether we'll be able to start regularly. So I expect these numbers, which are very good right now, we were on a roll, to decline a little bit. But right now we're up 155 students over the previous year in terms of our deposits. If that held true, we would be at almost 3,000 students, which would be the highest first-time freshman number in the history of the university. There are major reasons for this increase. We have developed our out-of-state regional markets. We are up 6.8% in deposits overall, but our regional out-of-state areas are up 13.7% in deposits. So this has been a very important effort that we've made out in these regions. We also have a targeted institutional need-based grant program that recruited 37 additional students so far from the segment of kind of Pell eligible students. We have a commitment through marketing and outreach to our Louisville region that has netted us an additional 72 students. And I will tell you that with the coronavirus issue, we are working hard on our Jefferson County students, harder than, and we always work hard with them, but we are working really hard this year because we want to make sure that we have a place for students whose parents say, you know what, given what happened last year, we would like you to be closer to home. And so we're hoping that we will draw more from our own area than in the past. And so far, we're up 72 just before this. So we're hoping that that will go up. We also have created a holistic consideration that will admit students that might not meet our normal admission standards. So students with slightly lower ACT scores, but who have very high school grade point averages. We are they are admitting those students holistically, and we have about an additional 50 students from that effort. We also know that the high schools were unable to deliver the ACT this year to their juniors, and so we are planning to continue the holistic effort for students who do not have ACTs to present to us as they start applying in fall for the following fall. So, and that's something that's happening across the nation. So we are doing some things that are particularly in response to the COVID. We have a virtual admitted students program that just started this week. So we had one on April 1st and 75 students attended. We are getting a lot of people who want to take virtual tours and participate in virtual admissions activities. And we have worked really hard to make sure that in the last 3 weeks, we have gotten an awful lot of videos up and other kind of opportunities for virtual engagement with us, because students cannot come to campus right now, but they can't go to any other campus too. So it's really important to know that across the state and across the nation, people are not traveling to campuses. So we're not unusual in this. We are like everybody else. We also reviewed all incomplete applications and reached out to those students individually to say, what can we do to help you complete your application? We have talked about students providing a personal essay instead of ACT scores, if that's what's holding them back, that they didn't take the ACT, or their ACT that they took last year as a junior was not what they wanted it to be. We have encouraged them to apply anyway. The other piece of this is we're working really hard on retention. Everything that I said to you about the academic response and everything that Michael Martis told you about student life is an attempt to retain the students we have so that they will be back with us next year, or they will graduate as they were supposed to this May or August. So we have done an awful lot to try to make the academic experience as positive as possible. We also have outreach programs to our current students. So our student workers are following up with texting through CardSmart to students who have not yet registered for fall to encourage them to register for fall. So these are current students who are in classes now but may have not registered yet for fall. We're encouraging them to do that. We have orientation course instructors who are reaching out to students who would be expected to come for fall. So this is really recruitment, but it's to keep them, that's people who have acknowledged that they want to come here, but to keep them interested. We're going to have virtual orientations if we are unable to have face-to-face. We have a plan for orientation that includes 4 options. One is just to delay the start. One is to postpone the start. The other is to do a hybrid virtual while they are here this summer so they can register, and then to bring them to campus a day early and have recruitment and orientation orientation activities in August. And then the final option, which we hope we don't have to go to, is to go to an entirely virtual orientation. So we have these plans in process. We have, the virtual orientation is pretty well planned, and we are starting to execute that. So I think that we are doing everything that we can to try to make sure not only that we keep the students we have, but that we enroll a robust freshman class. We were really upbeat about the numbers prior to this March crisis. But we still have not seen much melt. And so people have not been asking for their money back yet. So we think that's really optimistic. Michael Martis has told me that housing requests for first-time freshmen are still up. And again, he's not seeing requests yet for many refunds. So I think that's all positive, but we won't know more until we know more in some ways. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Beth. We'll get to all of the questions at the end, as you know. Appreciate that. Let's go to the next person, please.
Morning. I am going to talk to you all about our employees. And I'd just like to start by saying that the well-being of our employees and their families are always important to us, but I can just tell you that during this time, we recognize that it is more important than anything that we communicate with them to the best of our abilities. And in some cases, we try to do that in real time. So there are lots of things that we have done since we began this process. I am just going to highlight for you the spirit of some of those things in more of a summary. And then I'll talk to you in a little more detail about things that are going on right now. So on the 14th of March, that's when we determined that the remote work transition was going to happen at the university. And it did go out as a recommendation. And I am happy to announce that most people that are able to work at home have taken that recommendation, and that transition has gone really well. We have provided them with lots of virtual supporting pieces with our friends in IT and other places so that they can be successful at home to the best of their ability, just knowing what times that we're in. And so moving forward, I just want to talk a little more about that communication piece. Lots of what you're going to hear me talk about today will have to do with the benefits that we have. Either, Neely has made some changes to our policies to afford additional benefits to our employees, or there have been state or federal mandates. And I just want to let you know that in more than not cases, we have been able to either be ahead of those mandates, or we have been almost in real time in making sure that our employees are able to reap the benefits that would be helpful to them. So specifically, I want to talk about the federal legislation that came out. Gosh, it feels like it's been a month ago, but I think it was just last week, which discussed the extra sick leave of time, which is 80 hours that all our employees would receive for COVID-related concerns, or the expanded FMLA, which allows employees that have childcare concerns to be able to take care of their children. What was so unique about the FMLA piece is that they actually would get paid, where FMLA is normally an unpaid benefit. The employer would pay the employee at 2/3 their salary if they qualified, and then the employee could use their leave time to supplement the 2/3 salary so that they could be whole during that time. What I want to share with you is that Tom Hoy and his team and Shannon and her team actually followed that legislation and were able to give HR all the pieces that we needed so that when that legislation passed, we were able to afford that to our employees effective the 23rd of March, prior to the date that came out later that said that employers didn't have to do it until April 1. I say that to say, when I tell you that we are doing our very best as an institution to take care of our employees and their families, we mean that. And that's something that I'm really proud of. So moving forward, as it relates to other resources, I need you to know that in almost all the communications that come out, we reiterate to our employees that we have EAP, which is free to them and their family members that qualify. And we also have waived the telehealth fee for our employees so that they can any appointments, not just COVID-related appointments, which include mental health appointments, they can have those done via telehealth with no copay. Again, Neely was, before that legislation came out, we were ahead of that because she wanted to make sure that employees were able to get the help that they needed and didn't have any barriers as far as the finances. So I'm going to move to next steps and just talk to you a little bit about the impacts of the federal and state policies. I talked to you a little bit about what those were. I just want you to know that when it comes to communication, not only have we been sharing with our employees what the benefits may be or what the mandates may be as it relates to those federal or state mandates, but something different that we've done during this time, which I find has been very helpful, is that many people have expressed to us that they don't understand why some people have different might have different benefits or appear to have different benefits. So I'll just speak specifically to us being in different states. We have employees that live in Indiana, and we have employees that live in Kentucky. And so there may be things that impact, one group and not the other. So I want you to know that we have taken the extra step to be able to explain to our employees that we have an obligation to follow the law. But taking that into consideration with how that balances with the obligations that we have to our employees' well-being, and that we would never do anything to harm our employees, but certainly that our regulatory obligations and our legal obligations have to also be met. So I just wanted to share that with you because that is a lot of it's just more communication than we normally provide because these are unusual times, and we usually don't have divisions between our employees from one state or the other. And so just want you to know that we're cognizant of that and that we are responding to that to the best of our abilities. Finally, I just want to talk about what we're calling good news. And this is where I was going to give you a little more explanation. And that is, as far as our COVID-related diagnostic testing, you can see for yourself there that whether it's in a doctor's office, urgent care, or the ER, we have waived all of those copays. I talked to you about the telehealth copays. And with regards to the sick leave, I've already shared that information with you as well. That process is a work in progress, just so that you know. The federal government, as early as yesterday, provided us with some additional guidelines. And so, again, as fast as we can get the clarifications out to our employees, we are doing that. And, John Dree's team has been really helpful in making sure that we can do that as fast as we can. So we appreciate them as well. And finally, I just want you all to know that we recognize that just in these times that there are people out there that need additional help beyond what we would normally be talking about necessarily. And we have made sure that we have community resources available to them for assistance programs, maybe with their electric or with their rent. We've noted the Kroger Food Pantry. We also have a staff fund. It's called our SHARE program, where employees that have emergent needs can have $1,000 of cash that they can use to take care of whatever needs they have for them and their families. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much, Mary Elizabeth. As I said, you and your whole team have had to work through all of this, and we are very grateful. So appreciate that. And now we're going to turn to another big aspect of who we are as a university. We've talked about how we disseminate knowledge, but now we're going to talk about how we create knowledge through the research that we have. And I'd like to introduce Kevin Gardner to you. Talk about a running start for our new EVP for research. Kevin?
Thanks, Neely. So I am a new face here. I started this position the 7 days after the first case of coronavirus appeared in the U.S. So it wasn't clear to me at that time what that would mean. But I wanted to reflect to start out with about what I've seen as a bit of an outsider coming to this leadership team. And I'll just say that I'm deeply impressed by the leadership response, and actually not just the leadership response, the community response. And in particular, it's the respect that people have for one another and respect for all the ideas that are in this community. And I was just thinking, last night I got an elbow bump from the janitor staff who was down here at the Clinical and Translational Research Building, who was providing a critical function to enable the work that we're doing in response to COVID. And so it really is not just the leadership team, it's the whole community. So I've been very impressed. I wanted to start out by just reviewing the types of actions that we've taken. So we're in lockstep with all the federal guidance for conduct of research, and that's a continuously moving target. We do have essential research activities that are continuing, that really need to continue, or there'd be there could be lives lost and things like that. So imagine. For example, clinical trials with sick patients who are where it's a life and death decision. So there's those types of research activities that continue, but by and large, our research activities have been closed down. I wanted to provide some perspective on what it means to have a research university responding to COVID. So on the timeline that you got in your read ahead, I was reflecting that at the very beginning of that timeline is the time when our researchers really got activated and put in order for COVID, for coronavirus back in January, and we received that early February to grow up the coronavirus at our regional biocontainment facility and be able to develop tests to start looking at vaccines and therapeutics and things like that. So they were in action in early February. And then, as it notes on the slide here, we've been conducting testing for COVID since early March. We've conducted over 2,300 tests to date for hospitals, and we turn that around rapidly for them. So that's been a really critical aspect of Louisville and Kentucky's response to COVID, is this capacity that we have. And it's really our research and our researchers who have dropped much of their research in order to respond to this public health crisis by providing the testing that we have. And it's through our infectious diseases group, who have all these relationships with area hospitals. It's not just ULH, it's all the area hospitals, including a couple in southern Indiana. And then our Center for Predictive Medicine that developed the high throughput testing capability. So their samples are being received right now, right behind me, and that work continues today. The other critical thing that you hear about in the news all the time is the shortage of personal protective equipment, and our researchers in advanced manufacturing and in the speed school, and actually across the campus, it's more than just those individuals, are manufacturing lots of different types of personal protective equipment. They're manufacturing face shields that are being sent across Kentucky, but they're also being sent to New York City, where they're critically in short of those. Just yesterday we developed the process for decontaminating these N95 masks, which are also critically short, and we think that we can do 10,000 of those a day, which is quite a large number. So that's all. It's pretty amazing, the response right now. I just heard from Campus Health this morning that the limiting factor on getting people tested for COVID are the swab kits, the nasal swab kits, and we have people in the School of Medicine and in engineering who are working on manufacturing those kits as well. So it's an incredible response. I can't possibly capture all of the activities going on right now. For example, we're spinning up a contact tracing group because the public health groups are overwhelmed with this response, but we can offer contact tracing through our School of Public Health and our School of Social Work. So those types of activities are going on. We are submitting proposals to conduct research on coronavirus, on COVID-19, and we had over $20 million in proposals go out last week. And then lastly, there are lots of other tests that have been going on by our researchers. For example, this one that's noted on the slide is testing for antibodies, both to know who has had it and who may be immune to it, but also for the convalescent serum that you may have read about in the news. And lastly, I'll just say we have other therapeutics and vaccines that are being tested in animals. Our first license was signed on a compound called AS1411 that is an antiviral therapeutic that's shown to be effective. So we haven't announced that yet, but you'll see an announcement soon. There's reasons we can't publicize who that is right now, but there's just an incredible amount of work, and I am really proud of the researchers that we have here that have really responded incredibly well to the crisis and the need for all of these types of activities.
Thank you so much, Kevin. You have certainly been an incredible addition to our team, and for our trustees, I hope you see the impact that our research has, the fact that we are the ones that are providing testing for 15 area hospitals, and that's because of our research capability. And I want to specially call out, as Kevin did, Julio Ramirez and his team, Kenneth Palmer and his team, among many, many others. And we'll continue to bring you news and updates. And Kevin has been our point person in making sure that we get reports to the state and also coordinate with the federal offices as well. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And now we're going to go, before I started, I always thought, I've always prided myself on working really hard. I think that I have met my match in the person you're going to hear from next, and that's Dan Durbin. We'll just give you a quick overview today because at our board meeting in a couple of weeks, we'll do a thorough overview. But for now, just a couple of high-level comments from Dan Durbin.
Yes, thank you and good morning. Roughly 4 weeks ago, when the significance of COVID-19 began to emerge, we recognized the financial implications that it could have on the university and implemented some measures to preserve our cash position. The first thing we did was to implement a savings incentive plan that was designed to suppress spending and provide the units with incentives to do just that, so that they could retain those savings and help offset future revenue declines and increased expenses related to this situation. Units were also instructed to eliminate non-essential expenses. Travel was curtailed and hiring was restricted. we were already in the process of preparing next year's budget, so we basically expanded that process to also include this year, to work with the deans to identify ways to also improve this year's financial results, again, with the goal of maximizing our cash position so we could weather this storm. And from a monitoring standpoint, I think it's important for everyone to understand that our central finance offices, such as Treasury, payroll, purchasing, and so forth, implemented a business continuity plan a few weeks ago. So we have the same set of eyes watching things such as budget and cash, who were doing it before, only from a different location. So again, this initial phase was to take immediate steps to protect our financial and cash position and prepare ourselves for the unknown. From a next step standpoint, in addition to those preservation measures I mentioned a few moments ago, we developed a financial risk assessment model that identifies areas of risk, their monetary value, and it identifies those items at 3 points in time. First of which is through the end of June, this coming June, the second through December, and the third through next June. Since we don't know the duration of this situation, we wanted to identify key risks over the next 15 months, prioritize those in terms of their importance and their magnitude, and develop strategies to help mitigate them. From my perspective, the largest risks that we face are interruptions in revenues from tuition, clinical revenues that support the Health Sciences Center, and also revenues that support our self-supportive auxiliary functions such as housing, athletics, and dining. And this model is already producing results, and this process is producing results. We've already started to address some of these risks. For example, one of the immediate things that we were facing was the inability to conduct face-to-face classes this summer. That led to a process to convert about 550 traditional face-to-face classes to an online format. We also changed our pricing structure to make it more affordable to students, and we implemented our new budget model a little early to incentivize our summer school participation among the colleges. So again, this is a constantly changing process, and it changes as situations warrant. And shifting to some of the bright spots, one of the bright spots in this has been the recent CARES Act legislation. It contains some funding and also some provisions that'll help us through this. It won't solve the whole problem, but it certainly is a welcome help. There are some specific aspects to this that benefit us. For example, there was about $31 billion allocated to the Department of Education, of which $14 billion is designated to higher ed, and our share of that appears to be about $12 million. That $12 million is split 50-50 between institutional funds and emergency financial aid to students. So we're waiting for further detail and instructions from the Department of Education in terms of how those dollars get allocated, spent, and so forth. But there's $12 million available there. There's also about a $3 million allocation or $3 billion allocation to states for K-12 through higher ed. Our state received about 44 million of those funds, and it's up to the governors. Those are the governor's discretion funds or state discretionary funds that we don't know how will be allocated yet. But in addition to the direct funding, the Act also gives us some flexibility to defer some tax payments, which we're looking at in terms of managing cash flow. And we're also looking at some funds, and Tom will go into a little more insight into that later, but we're also looking at some possible funds to help offset some of the clinical losses in the School of Medicine that support the medical school missions. So, all in all, very active planning process, both in depth and in breadth, we certainly appreciate the patience and the cooperation and the participation of the campus community to help us weather this storm.
Thank you so very much, Dan. Appreciate it a great deal. Now we're going to move to athletics. Vince Tyre.
Thank you, Neely. Just to kind of get you up to speed on where athletics is, March 12th is when everything hit the fan in athletics across the country, and at that time the ACC basketball tournament was canceled. NCAA canceled not only winter sport championships but spring sport championships, and then later the ACC fell in line and canceled all activities, whether it be a practice, a game, a championship, or what have you. So it happened very abruptly, as you would expect, and we quickly went to work on how to deal with our student athletes and how to keep them safe while making sure we're continuing their academic progress on campus and now online. So a lot happening. There's been a lot of legislation that has occurred since then that I'll get into in a second, but it's been long hours on a daily basis with the NCAA and ACC to respond and then think ahead of where we are as a university as much as a conference in the NCAA membership. So with that being said, we did close our facilities pretty quickly. We were probably, to be honest, probably on the aggressive side of things on closing facilities as it relates to our student athletes. I think in hindsight, it was definitely the right move, but whether we didn't allow them to practice at all, the strength and conditioning areas, meaning the weight rooms, the athletic facilities, everything was shut down. And the only thing that remains open today and remained open during that time was the training facilities for any student athletes that were rehabbing from a surgery or an injury or so forth. And then now through technology, we're continuing, obviously it never stopped, the mental health support through the Vanessa Shannon and Kate O'Brien's leadership. So that's continuing as well. Noted here on the slide, we continue to try to support some of our sponsorships that we have with companies and aided state, local campus communications. We've done a variety of things. Some of our leadership and the head coaching ranks, as well as myself, have done a variety of social media messaging on behalf of the governor and mayor and our campus and UofL Health. With the student athletes, we're continuing our community service, but doing it in a different format today. We went to virtual reading, to elementary school students. So we have student athletes actually reading books online for Jefferson County Public Schools. We got with Marty Polio to arrange that. So that's continuing. And then we have another number of health initiatives that are, we've used social media to use our strength and conditioning and nutrition folks to educate the community and our fan base, et cetera, about how they can stay healthy, both mentally and physically, while we're learning a new environment over the last 3+ weeks. So there's been a lot going on, but we'll continue the communication. We're continuing to do our part to try to flatten the curve and slow the spread. It certainly impacted us in our department. It's hit staff and student athletes, and we've got to exercise our ability to how we manage that as well. And I'm really happy to say across campus that we've had great coordination and communication from a number of people each time we've had something occur. So Sherry Hildreth and Campus Health has been terrific, as have our partners at UofL Health and Norton Healthcare. It's really been a team effort when we've had things arise or thinking about things we can do. Right away in the early days, we went out with a campaign that we had started to launch, that We Rise as One, and that's had great impact. You can see the logo that we have here. It's also been one we've had in the airport in our advertising, and we've had great feedback. Actually, a video that I produced with a voiceover has been used by some of our corporate sponsor CEOs. So we've gotten really terrific feedback on that, and worth a listen to in terms of how we think about doing this together. And you hear the governor's daily speech, but this was one that we came out with that message early, and it really connected. And then the NCAA actually picked up on that and created their own version of this for their membership of all university campuses. In terms of where we go from here. The coaches and staff, they're certainly engaged. Our student athletes, one thing we did right away was to make sure from the academic side that they're well aware that our doors were open. And we practiced social distancing inside of the Thornton Academic Center, but also have, teleeducation going on, if you will. And we're continuing work with our tutors. So if anything, the tutoring has increased online as they adapted to taking classes online. It feels like our group is more adjusted to it today from the student athletes, and I can speak for having 2 college students and a high school student at home learning online. And it's amazing this week versus last week how they've adjusted and moving along. But the same is happening with our student athletes, and we're following those, particularly those we would perceive to be at risk. The coaches are in regular contact with them. There are NCAA guidelines around no virtual activity around any physical activity. So there's no organized activities. It's only voluntary work that can be going on from the student athletes. And we're hoping they're taking care of their mind and body on their own, but we cannot do anything, skills instruction, et cetera, online. So it's really just daily talk and texting, video conferencing. The same with prospective athletes that we'd be recruiting. That moratorium, called a dead period of actual on-campus or off-campus visits, has been extended to May 31st. So there's no recruiting going on, physical recruiting face-to-face until, at this point, until June 1, and then we'll see what happens once we get into May and where we are with the virus. I think that from that, the next things we've really looked at is, what's the financial implication of what's happened here? The NCAA basketball tournament is a significant revenue producer for its membership, to include us. And we have followed that closely through the NCAA, who does a distribution to the ACC, and, where the ACC is working its own numbers so that we know what the impact would be on us. I would tell you that once we got back from the ACC conference on March 13th, we quickly shuttered all travel. We were idling, we shut down all travel, period, but travel cards, expense cards that may be in our department, and we've brought the expenses down very quickly. And we're still looking at a good profit for this year, even with the negative implications here, because there are a number of variable expenses related to spring sports travel and championships that we won't experience. But we've also frozen a number of things in the department. A couple weeks ago, we froze all positions, new hires. We took down postings of positions, et cetera. It has to be critical, emergent replacement that would need my approval for that. So we've worked with Dan Durbin and his group. He's pretty clear on where we are financially for fiscal year 20, which helps us. That positive variance is going to help us mitigate what we believe to be a very challenging fiscal year 21. It would have been anyways, but it certainly will be this year. And we've run sensitivity on that. We were on it again yesterday for a few hours, and have some initiatives that some have already taken place and some to take place related to our operating expense and how we view ourselves, assuming that this is going to continue for a longer duration. The biggest risk implication, we believe, is the one that's being talked about most nationally, and that's whether there's a football season or not. It's obviously a nice piece of our revenue as we create revenue from men's basketball and football primarily, and that would be problematic in many ways. We're certainly not as tied to football as in terms of percentage of revenue that some other schools are. I know the SEC, I think, is in the 70% kind of range with football, where we're not at that level. So anyways, in terms of looking forward, we're in pretty good shape. Capital projects, we've idled those and moving forward. On the good news front of this page, you got the NCAA provides extra year eligibility for all spring student athletes. So the NCAA voted on 9 different initiatives. One of them was extending what's called the seasons of competition. And that allows those spring sports students the opportunity, if the conference and the schools adopted it, to have an additional year of competition. Neely and I are working closely on that. We talk on a daily basis, as are the ADs in separate group and the campus CEOs, working to figure out an ACC position on this, because it's permissive, meaning what the NCAA voted on is not a demand or requirement, but it's permissive to the conference or the individual schools to decide their position and what they wish to do on a number of these initiatives, which we will adopt most, but probably not all. And we'll have more to come on that as we continue to meet on that. As noted here, we've at the bottom, the governor's COVID. I mentioned that Coach Satterfield and Coach Mack have participated in those videos and commercials. If you've watched the daily update by Governor Beshear, you would see those as well. I would like to thank Jenny Sawyer and our admissions and Jim Begani. We offered to help out on producing video virtual tours for the admissions group to use while we're not able to do the tours. We moved over some of our resources and athletics to help in a variety of ways, and that's one that has really paid off. And Jenny and I were exchanging the other night to continue to get these prospective students that Beth referred to stay engaged with us, and we're trying to do all we can on that front to continue to support it. But at this point, we've learned a new way of doing business, and it's a lot of great communication. Our leadership's responded well. I'm sure we're going to have a number of initiatives to be responsive to what's going on, and we'll communicate those as this thing rolls out later.
Thank you, Vince. And again, just to clarify to everybody, the ACC as presidents and the ADs, we're trying to figure out what our posture will be given what the NCAA has said. So just to clarify, ACC will have a position on this as well. To move on, we saved the best for last in terms of where most of the action is. I'd like to thank Tony Gansel, because the doctors that are working so closely with Tom Miller and the UofL Health team are part of her faculty. And with that, Tom, I'd like to turn it over to you. The heroics, really, that's the word, of everybody on the UofL Health campus is most appreciated.
Thank you, Neely. And I can't just say that enough. We have heroes out in every one of our hospitals who are looking in the eye of the tiger and punching them in the nose, because they're out there trying to make sure that they're going into the sickest patients that are out there and taking care of those patients without any regret and without any hesitance, trying to do what's right for our community. So let me kind of talk about broadly where we're at. From a hospital leadership standpoint, there are some key priorities that we have tried to focus on. One is making sure that we have enough PPE. You'll hear that term. That's called personal protective equipment. And our goal is to make sure that our staff and our doctors are safe so that they can take care of patients and they won't be at risk. And so far to date, we've only had 6 of our associates, team members, test positive for coronavirus. One of those was a physician. 5 others were caregivers. None of those were involved in the direct care of a positive coronavirus patient. So they most likely got that case from other sources other than the hospital. We have implemented something we call a universal mask protocol, where every caregiver within every clinical area is wearing a mask for the protection of themselves and others within the organization. And when we talk about PPE, you've heard Kevin talk about masks and shields. We have done and looked for every resource that is out there. It is a battle every single day with FEMA, who is reallocating supplies to the most hardest hit areas. A lot of those going to New York, Washington, New Jersey, and California. And the state, who also is trying to acquire it. And they're requiring it from the normal supplies that come to hospitals. But we have been successful. And we have, I would say, on average, about 100 days supply in a surge situation of personal protective equipment. We're still getting things in. We've received 3 shipments from the state's reserve, as they have stockpiled supplies, which has been very helpful to us. We received nothing from the federal government. They're reallocating all of those to those states that I mentioned. But for today's purposes, we believe that we have adequate supplies to get us through a surge. We're still doing things every day to try to do things. And I have to say, Kevin mentioned the Speed School of Medicine. They have worked with putting a design together to have GE make 3,000 mask shields for our staff. They'll meet the needs of more than just our hospital. They'll meet the needs of a lot of the hospitals out there. So there's a lot of creativity associated with it. But making sure our people are safe are the number one goal that we have. Second from that also has, I have to thank the research program, research lab at university. The most important thing next after making sure our staff are safe is to make sure that we test broadly patients so that if they do test positive, we can isolate them and not get them in a situation where they infect other people. Almost 100% of the testing that we have done has been through the university's research lab and Kevin's team associated with it. They've been doing that work for all the 10 hospitals in the Louisville area, and have been ramping up that testing so that we can do broader testing out there. That's the most important issue that we do now, is test our patients who might be at risk. We did mention, Kevin mentioned testing kits. These swabs are not available right now, and so we're being creative, and we've ordered 100,000 swabs, and we're going to make our own kits so that they're readily available in the community. Our supply chain team is doing amazing things to find out resources that we have. The third thing I would say is the effect of the governor. I'll show some slides here in a second, but the governor has done some things well ahead of most states in the United States in regard to protecting the community. He has issued executive orders asking hospitals, not asking, but giving an order to hospitals to stop doing elective procedures. We are following all of his orders, and it has some consequences to us. Surgery is a big part of what we do within our organization, and so we've seen a reduction by about 2/3 the amount of surgery that we're doing. So all the ones that we're doing are either urgent or emergent. Our ambulatory surgery centers, which we have 4, have seen a 90% reduction of surgery, and our physician offices have seen about a 50% reduction in the volumes within their offices. That does have a financial impact. The unintended consequences, the reduction of revenues associated with it, but we're able to get by. It will have a major impact on us, but we're okay for today. But the reality is his goals were very straightforward. One is to save PPE so we could have it when the surge occurs. Second is to continue to isolate people so don't bring them into hospitals. And third is to build some surge capacity. And that has resulted in, we're down about 200 patients a day within our hospitals. And that was an intended goal, so that when you need these beds, that they're available for the community. And so we're planning that. There are models out there, and I'll go through the models that show kind of where Kentucky is versus other states. We do anticipate a surge here at some point in time, and beyond the bed capacities that the community has. And so we're also planning that. Our bed capacity is about 926 beds. We only have about 550 patients in the hospital today. But we have the ability to work up to another 1,400 beds if we use all of every area within the hospital that has oxygen. We can work up to about 1,400 beds. You heard yesterday that the governor is setting up at the fairgrounds a 2,000 bed hospital in case of a surge. There's no indication that that's going to happen today. He is just planning ahead to make sure that in case there is a need, that we would not be in a situation like New York. Other things, and I'll talk about that just a little bit later in a second. Other things our hospital has done, we sent as many people home as we can. We sent 700 staff home to work from home. We have considered furlough, so you'll hear the word furloughs at some hospitals. We have not implemented that. It's a difficult balance between making sure you have the staff if you're in a surge position, and then sending people home in a furlough situation where they're on unemployment. To date, we have sent people home and allowed them to use PTO, and we'll actually allow them to go to a negative 80-hour balance in regard to PTO. And we're asking for volunteers who would like to go home, particularly since kids are out of school, to go home without pay. And we're having people who would like to do that based on the circumstances within their family. But so far, we have committed to our staff that we need them. We're having to do things within the organization, like restricting access to the hospital. And so we've closed at about half of our entry points. We have our staff who were working in surgery and other areas and therapies, manning the front desk of our entry points, screening every patient that comes in for temperature and history of where they've been to see if they might be at risk. We reduced the number of visitors to 1 per patient, and most likely will be much more restrictive, not allowing visitors except in extraordinary circumstances. But we're trying to do that to protect the organization and protect our caregivers. From a communication standpoint, I can't tell you how many conference calls we do a day. It's just an incredible amount of communication that we're doing when we're trying to make sure staff understands exactly where we're at, making sure that they understand the resources that are available to them, and to give them the comfort and support that they need in order to keep facing the eye of this tiger that's in front of us. And so I think we're doing everything that we can do to make staff feel comfortable about where we're at and the resources we have. So let me talk about surge for a second. Jake, would you go to the next slide? This is 2 graphs that I think might be interesting for you. And what you can't see are the scales on the left and right, because the scales are significantly different either. But if you'll see where New York is, New York shows a very high peak in a short window of time. And so they're on that upside of the scale. They're anticipated to be, their peak is anticipated to be later next week. And they're having a significant shortage of beds. Based on the projections right now, they're going to have 35,000 less beds than they need. And that's what you keep hearing in regard to New York. With the actions of the governor, you'll see a much different curve that's anticipated for Kentucky. It is a much lower curve. The death rates are significantly lower associated with that. But it extends this out for some period of time. The social isolation, the closing of the restaurants has caused the curve to be much lower if you look at those dotted lines, and almost to the point that the capacities of beds and ICUs that we have would be enough for Kentucky. Now we're having to plan for surges that might go beyond that because no one really knows, but it is a much different situation because of the actions of the governor. Jay, you can go to the next slide. This would give you some idea of deaths per day. And what you'll see in the peak deaths per day, you're talking about in New York. I'm just going to come back to it. New York is looking at 11 deaths per day and 547. Actually, look at 10,000 deaths. And then in Indiana, we're talking about 600 deaths. So a much different situation. We're still about 40 days away from our peak. You can understand with the hospital being somewhat empty, we still have 41 days till we expect a peak in the surge. But we're still keeping our staff on board. How the balance of that is a really difficult situation. And so, Jake, go to the next slide. This will give you total deaths that are anticipated. And I have to let you know this. Last year in Kentucky, there were under 100 deaths from the flu. It is anticipated that this is between 6 and 8 times more deadly situation. And so that's why they're projecting about 800 deaths as associated with this. But it flattens out very quickly. Once we get to toward the middle of June, this should rescind from a Kentucky standpoint. And so, again, we're planning for that. Again, from a bed capacity standpoint, we think we'll be able to staff up to about 1,400 beds. Today, across our 6 hospitals, we have 13 positive COVID-19 patients in the hospital. We've got about 61 that we're evaluating that aren't positive today, but they have signs and symptoms. And so we're not overwhelmed with patients, but we have a phased approach in case that is the case. So we've got a 4-phased approach in regard to staffing up beds, and I think we're ready for that. We have enough ventilators. We have 170 ventilators. We have an additional 100 anesthesia machines that can be used as ventilators. And we've requested another 90 from the federal government that we don't know whether we'll get or not. But I would tell you we are doing everything we can from a surge standpoint. The last thing I would tell you is that to help us during this crisis period, we did receive the $35 million from the economic development loan from the state. We received that yesterday. We also, the board of UofL Health asked us to pull down our working capital loan of $30 million, which we did do. And we're anticipating that through the CARES Act, that we might have access to some additional money to help through this. This money may have to be paid back, but it's a big range between $50 and $100 million. We don't know specifically what we'll be eligible for, but we're going to also go ahead and put the request associated for that. So we have a cash flow situation that we're fine on cash flow to get through this surge period of time. We believe we're prepared from a staffing standpoint. We're prepared from a surge planning standpoint. We need more testing, which we will do. But the priorities for us are PPE, access to testing, surge preparation, and cash flow. But I will tell you, the community has been extraordinarily responsible to us. We get requests for people who want to help in any way they can. People are making masks. People are provided all of their masks and all of their PPE that they had in their organization to us because they didn't need that. And the amount of people who are willing to just come in and provide food for our staff is greatly appreciated. So there's a tremendous amount of community support to help the hospitals out during this. Neely, I'll stop there.
Tom, thank you. And I just want to share with everybody that watching that whole team, Tom Miller and the entire hospital team, their communication, the effort to put patients first, which is, of course, part of what they do, has been most impressive. I want to apologize if this sounds like a lot of our patting ourselves on our back. That is not the intention of this. I just want to tell you that it's an opportunity for me to showcase all the different areas and what's going on. I'd like to have Michael Wade Smith talk a little bit about where we are, where all the resources are, and then we'll open it up to questions. Michael?
Thank you, Neely. Just wanted to draw everyone's attention. Again, we've shared this resource with the board and with our campus community a number of times, but the UofL coronavirus website, louisville.edu/coronavirus, is our main source of information for the campus community. We are working around the clock getting information from across campus to make sure that it's up to date. Tom Miller just shared in these graphs that the next 4 to 6 weeks are going to be incredibly difficult for the community. And we know that we're going to end up in a position to continue to make decisions. We won't be able necessarily to come together daily or weekly with the larger groups, but this is a place where everyone in the campus community can go to get information. And just want to shout out the athletics team, marketing communications team led by Lottie, the UofL Health Group led by Diane Partridge, and of course the UofL Group under John Dries for their incredible work, just making sure that information is getting to the constituents that need it. And a special shout out to Sarah Lopez, our new internal communications lead, and Amber Peter, our web lead, for all of their incredible work. We've heard from folks regionally and nationally that the information we're putting out is helping other campuses also prepare because, as Neely mentioned early on, UofL has been in a position of leadership in the Commonwealth throughout this process. So if you have other questions or trying to understand the approach that we're taking, this is an incredible resource. Also in the communications and updates tab, you can see ongoing daily updates of the campus communications we're sending and those messages to stay up to speed with the rapidly changing environment we're living in. And just wanted to call attention specifically to that website as a resource for the board as well. Thanks, Neely.
Thank you, Michael. I'd like to make my concluding comments, refer back to where I started. For us, I will tell you that you've heard what we've been doing in the big buckets, whether it's our academics, health sciences, research, athletics. But I want to acknowledge the group that I'm the proudest of through all of this, and that's our students. There has been so much thrown at them, and I am so grateful to them, and I'm so proud of them. These are lessons in resiliency that none of us thought we'd have to learn so quickly, but a special thank you to our students and our student leaders for demonstrating that they are leaders by working with us every step of the way. With that, Chair Nixon, this was our dry run, as we said. I know it's been a long update, but we thought for the community as well, not just for our trustees, this would be helpful. We'll have much more detailed specifics, obviously, when we have our actual board meeting. But for now, we just wanted to give everybody kind of an overview of what's been happening on campus.
Yeah, thank you, Neely, and thank everybody that's presented today. I think we wanted to do this for a couple of reasons. One, there's just been so much going on, and I think it's important for the trustees to be aware, and I think it also gives us an opportunity to know where we might be able to help. And looking at the April 23rd meeting, we know we've got a lot of business conduct, and there's just was not going to be the time on that agenda for people to get this kind of content. So I don't think this is a time to apologize for being proud of your team, Neely. I have been incredibly impressed with what everybody's been doing. And I think the thing I would add, just being involved in some other organizations, every single one of them, there is somebody from our university that is involved in supporting them through this as well. So there are people not on this call who deserve a lot of thanks for the things they're out doing in the community. I know we've run a little bit over. If people have questions, you need to turn on your video and your mic, and then everybody else needs to mute so we don't get background noise. So I would open it up at this point for questions.
Hello, it's John Chilton here. I had a Hello?
Hi,
Yes,
John.
John.
We hear
Yeah, we hear you,
Go ahead.
John.
Okay. I was interested in knowing, aside from all the unusual things that have happened during the last few weeks, how does online learning fit into the overall plan? Do students do homework at home routinely already? Are they reading books? How does that supplement the educational process? The answer may be better addressed at a later date, but I thought I'd pose.
Yeah, no, John, I think that's a very important question. We've moved to remote instruction, and it's a learning process. So we already have several online courses. So some faculty have a great deal of familiarity with it. But the truth is, when we said all courses move online, there was a learning curve for the faculty just as much as for the students. So we worked through, like everybody else, a lot of challenges. And I'm proud that we were on the forefront in making decisions. For example, we have already announced, as Beth Bain told you, that summer courses will also be fully online. And what we were trying to say is this semester, we did our best. We moved everything online so that students, whether it's submitting their assignments, taking exams, everything is online. But for summer, we're now starting to work so that from the get-go, we can be intentional about structuring the courses to be delivered remotely. And we will have more detail for you for our board meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I would appreciate just hearing a little bit from Jasper in terms of the student perspective.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Jasper.
Yes, I'd be happy to talk about it. Obviously, there's disappointment about what's happening, but I've been overwhelmingly amazed, and I'm so proud of how well students have responded to this, how resilient everybody I've spoken to is being. I think that there are concerns about how this semester will affect them in the future, whether or not taking pass-fail will change how they get into grad school, what it will mean for summer classes, what it will mean for all of the necessary pieces of the curriculum and courses that they had to take this semester. And I'm appreciative of how easy faculty and faculty leadership have made it to try to work through and answer these questions. Obviously, people are nervous and students are concerned about what this is going to mean for the future and how they're going to get through it. But I think people have been responding very well to what UofL has been doing. And I know that we've been a leadership beacon to look to for other schools in the state. I know that students have reached out from across schools at the Commonwealth asking me, you know, what is your involvement in this? What are you doing in this process? And how did you make it happen so that we can try to implement some of these changes on our own campuses? So I think that we're stepping up in terms of student services and student response. And I just hope that we keep it up going forward, because I think we're doing a really good job.
Well, thank you, Jasper, and thank you for all you're doing to support your fellow students. John, Krista, do you want to give us a quick update on how you sense the faculty and staff are holding up? John, why don't you go first?
Staff are holding up well to this point. I think they're very understanding of the situation that we're in. They're appreciative of the leadership that we've received. And, you know, I think everybody understands where we are. I'm very proud of many of our staff that were talked about earlier, with the essential service people that are still on campus, making sure our students are taken care of, the ones that are still around, people in Mark Watkins' shop that are making sure offices are getting cleaned and disinfected. A lot of faculty have to come to campus to use technology, and they're making sure those places are safe for them. So I'm extremely grateful for those people at this point that are putting other people before themselves and making sure things are taken care of.
That's great. Thank you, John. Krista?
Good morning. The faculty have really stepped up and been just amazing throughout this transition. As Neely mentioned, it was a large learning curve that had to be learned very quickly on moving to remote and online teaching, if that wasn't something that you already did in your classroom. And the faculty have just embraced this and adapted very quickly. They've had, of course, personal concerns and concerns for their family, but you know, through all of this, the students are at the center, and it's just been a great team to work with. I've been in touch frequently with John and Jasper and the faculty senate, and I think they've embraced this. They've moved forward. They've adapted to different platforms and different teaching very quickly, and I'm just really, really proud of our faculty and all of our staff and students.
We are too.
Mary,
go ahead, John.
I'm sorry, I forget to mention one thing that Mary Elizabeth mentioned earlier, the SHARE program, and that's a donation-based program that makes those financial resources available to staff in an emergency situation. It's in pretty good shape. We received a very nice anonymous gift yesterday that more than doubled the fund for that. We also have a shared leave program where people can donate excessive sick or vacation time and help cover each other if other people get in that problem. So we're working from the Staff Senate side to promote those two programs and try to grow those so we can take care of more people if things get worse.
That's great. Neely has shared with me the generosity of the faculty and the staff in terms of supporting each other and the students. So thank you. I've been using the phrase lately that this is a time to give until it hurts. But in any event, I think to the extent there's anything anybody's heard today that they want to know more about and get an update on at the April 23rd meeting, I'd certainly invite that input. Are there any other questions before we adjourn? Okay, I will assume not. Thanks again for all your all's fabulous leadership. Crisis like these is when you find out, who really can step up and do what needs to be done. And you all seem to be doing everything possible and really working well together. And I'm so impressed by that. It's not actually technically necessary, but if I could have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor saying aye?
Aye.
All right, everybody stay safe. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.